Sally, welcome back to the podcast.
Oh, I'm so happy to be with kindred spirits. I feel like we all share a lot in the same areas of our hearts.
Oh, we could not agree more. We adore you so much and are so happy to have you back on talking about a topic that I think is really vulnerable for a lot of women, and that is friendship. And this is rounding out our Healthy Way series this January. And we thought this would be a good one because it really is a subject that people, when you hear the word friendship, they feel really warm toward or they feel really hurt toward, depending on their various experiences. So, what makes female friendships difficult, do you think?
Well, I think that there's so many factors. For one thing, we all live very isolated lives. We operate by our own set of values, our own set of commitments, our own set of priorities, and then we have difficulty because we don't know our neighbors. We oftentimes go to mega churches and we don't have time to join small groups. And so it's kind of like finding a needle in a haystack, trying to find someone who has time, who also has your values, who also gets along with your personality and is at the same general age range. What I mean is it's kind of like finding one coin in the midst of a million, just with all the factors that are mitigating against us today in our very individualistic society. But I also think that many times women have almost gotten used to not having the community and the encouragement and the fun and fellowship of groups of women because it's become so rare in our culture today. I think that we were created to have grandmas and mothers and cousins and aunts and neighbors and people who lived near us our whole lives, who shaped their hearts around the similar values that we have. And so we were made to have this huge support system just all around us to breathe in, day out, people who would help us with all the stages of our lives. And we've kind of gotten used to not having any of that, and we think it's normal, and I don't think it is.
Hmm. That is such a great observation. I do think it has become the norm for people
Mm-hmm.
to just run from one thing to the next and
Mm-hmm.
not be looking for that daily support, except maybe from one or two people. And you're talking about a much bigger net that was built into cultural dynamics that have changed as far as
Yeah, I think
smaller
so.
communities and
There's
churches where you had people who were of different generations coming together.
Right, right. And people who were experienced at your stage in life who could help you, and people that you could help who were under you. And yeah, I think that life was supposed to be more celebrated when you had a joy, that there were people who would cheer you on, and there were people who would love gathering together. And, women used to gather over the by the clotheslines or while they were working in their garden or whatever. It's just become a very complicated, complex society. And we have forgotten that we were really created to have the oxygen of love and to have purposeful, intimate relationships that built over time. And I think it's a real profound issue today. That's why my daughters and I wrote Girls Club, because I was very intentional with them over the years, from the time they were very little, to cultivate a friendship and kind of a community around us, similar tastes in food and movies and books. And we're now each other's best friends, but each of us are living in big international cities, and we're finding that women on a regular basis are just so lonely.
Can you also speak to the hurt that women have experienced in friendship and why that might be? And often what I see is that sometimes women are more hurt by their relationships inside the church than even outside the church. So what is your take on that?
Yeah, I think I've been so surprised by that in my life. I was in the midst of writing another book about 30 things I've learned that I wish I had known. And one of them was that it's harder to get along with Christians. But I think that it's unfortunate. We come to, we probably come to church or to Christians with high expectations of what they're going to be like. And so many people, there's so many different, I don't know if I would say flavors of Christianity now. People are so adamant about their, what they believe and what they think matters and about their moralistic issues. And I think sometimes just a very basic charitable relationship where you go to everyone that you know in the name of Christ, in the love of Christ, and look into their heart and say, I wonder how I can encourage you. I wonder how I can love you. I wonder how I can be a part of Christ's hands reaching out to you today. And I think so many times Christians have their pet rules or lists, and Christians can become such a critical group of people. The other aspect of that too is that, of course, many people who come to Christ still don't come from a healthy background where they learned how to relate, where they learned how to forgive, where they learned how to give words of love and encouragement. And I think that just because someone says that they believe in Christ doesn't mean that they have a mature character. And yet sometimes, I call it the good little Christian girl syndrome. Sometimes we make assumptions about people and expect them to behave in a certain way when we don't really even know if they're healthy. We don't even know them. And so it makes for a really very difficult arena. And so I think that probably, especially those of us who've been believers for a while or have been in a variety of Christian groups, have all in some way or the other been hurt or maybe ostracized from a group that we were hoping to find acceptance in.
Mm-hmm. That is so great, Sally, to remember that the definition of a Christian is somebody who has accepted God's grace, gift of grace, but that doesn't mean that they know how to be a friend.
Mm-hmm.
They have maybe a whole lifetime of behaviors and patterns that they need to relearn, and maybe don't even know that they need to relearn, right? Because sometimes when you're operating out of unhealth, you don't know that you're unhealthy. So
Mm-hmm. I think some people still exist in the high school era, where there were cliques and some people were popular and some people weren't. And so their whole image of what friends are is just terrible. And I think that's another reason we wrote our book, Girls Club, because we really wanted to say we need friends. I think another problem is that women are so isolated and needy today that they're going into relationships saying, meet my needs, love me, listen to me, listen to my story, ask me how I'm doing, instead of coming into friendship with a healthy soul, with a soul that has been filled up and a mind that has been enlightened and a heart that has been full. And so it's really so important that we learn how to cultivate community and cultivate accountability and learn to go into relationships with real healthy tools, so to speak, and priorities.
You hear that a lot about marriage, that it's better for two whole people to come together and add to each other's lives instead of seeking, that kind of savior mentality from your spouse. But you don't hear that much in friendship. And it just makes so much sense. And the other thing I was thinking about is our young women growing up with, kind of the added burden of social media, which we all love and hate all at the same time. And our daughters are being raised in a different way because of their digital generation. And I think that is problematic for them as they develop friendships as well.
Yeah, I do too. And that's why, again, I hate to keep talking about the book, but we wanted the book, our story, to encourage moms to make a regular time where they meet with their daughter, where they have fun, where they're building a friendship, having anchors in the week where they're talking, where they're looking into the personality of their child and really seeing who they are and liking them for who they are. And I think that I've always said that if you really want your teenager to talk with you and love you when they become teens, it all starts when they're 2 years old. And so that their dependence upon you, not just as a mom, but as a friend and companion in life, already has the groundwork there. It doesn't mean that teenage years won't still be hard, but there will be a foundation for them trusting you, wanting to know what you think, and wanting to share their heart with you in those times. But there's so many things I guess we should all write about and make very clear in this whole process.
It makes me think last week, one of my daughters was telling me about her day, and I think I went into solution mode. And later that night, like hours later, she said, Mom, I just wanted you to hear that I had a hard day. And it's the beginning of that, I think, that transition as my kids get older, of treating them in some cases more like a friend than like my child. Mm-hmm. Although I think I still need to step in and parent sometimes. So for parents of teenagers, how do you walk that line? Because I hear so often our teenagers don't need us to be their friends. They need us to be their parents. So for a mom who's desiring friendship, because that's really what I want with my girls, how do I walk that line between being a friend and then also needing to discipline or needing to direct her in a certain way?
I've heard that axiom before, of course, so many times, but I think that the best parenting methods are by becoming a friend with your child. And what do I mean by that? I mean that when we go to our own friends, we honor them as human beings. We accept the limitations of their personality. We have a desire to share heart to heart and see what they think about what's going on in our heart. We tend to cultivate happy, fun times with them and take time for it. We go out to coffee with our friends. We cultivate it. We nurture and cultivate really important relationship skills. And I think that that's kind of, again, what Joy was 7 years old and Sarah was actually 18, because there's 11 years difference between them. But I very intentionally, every Tuesday night it was for a while, but we would watch a movie, we would go out to dinner, we would paint nails, we would listen to music, we would just do such fun things. And we had a couple other anchors in our week, so that when difficult days happened, or when they needed us. I think sometimes women are so busy and kids are so busy, especially in teenage years, that if you don't have that groundwork where they already feel like there's a mutual trust and a mutual respect, I think it's possible to play both the parent and the friend at the same time. And I don't know if that makes any sense or not, but I know one of the stories in our book is about my daughter, Sarah. She said that she remembers when she was very young, and she says 2 years old, but I think it was probably older, 4 years old or something. But that we were in a room with another adult woman, and we were talking in the kitchen or something. And Sarah said that one of the women said something about, I don't remember what the subject was, but about a meeting or about snowstorm or whatever. And Sarah piped in and gave her opinion about what had happened. And the woman said, "Oh, honey, you're too young to know what you're talking about." And she looked up at me and she said, "Mommy and I are pals, and she likes what I have to say." And so then at that point, she said that I jumped in and said, "Oh, Sarah shares all my best moments with me. We are friends who walk through every day together." And she said she remembers even as a little girl thinking, "I'm glad my mother thinks that I'm worthy of being an adult friend in her life." And I don't know if that makes sense or not, but I do think that sometimes we're so trying to do the right thing and control our children that we forget to stand back and respect them and honor who they're becoming and like their personality, even in all of the crazy ways it expresses itself. And I think that when you just develop a very general respect and love and kindness and thoughtfulness, getting somebody some flowers, giving your daughter flowers, or leaving a note, or taking her out for a new dress or coffee or whatever on a regular basis, kind of gives her, and then remembering what it was like to be a teenager. I think that investment in our girls will bloom into a deep and respectful relationship with them. Does that make sense?
Oh, it totally does. And it really aligns actually with, we did a healthy parenting podcast in this series with David Thomas, and he talks about building resilience in your kids, and that empathy and questioning are the two things to really do to build that resilience. And I feel like you just said the same thing, just with different words, that, because
Mm-hmm.
his big thing is they actually have a lot to offer, but we don't even ask them what they think or what their plan is. We just tell them what we think they should do, right? Instead of
Mm-hmm.
trusting and respecting who they are and knowing they have something to offer, and they can create strategy and plans, and they can have
Mm-hmm.
insights that are new that we don't have. So I really like that you're both kind of saying the same thing in a different way. And that really is, I think, a good word for parents.
Well, I feel like one of the things I learned to do is to speak forward into my children's future, into their lives. And I would say, you are the best of friends. I know that God is going to use you in so many ways to encourage people. Or I see such an idealistic heart. Maybe you'll be a great writer. I believe in who you're going to become. And I think as I look back, a lot of parents are so fearful of this world and what is going to happen to their children. And of course, there's a lot of basis for fear. But I think that I studied the life of Christ over and over and over again. And he set his disciples free. He didn't, he didn't try to control them. He sent them out with blessing and confidence. And I know that it was real important for my kids for us to be able to say, I really trust your character. I've seen that you've made some good decisions. We kind of had he who is faithful in small things will be faithful in much. So as our children grew and took on more responsibility, we believed forward. I believe God is going to use you at the university. You have such a great faith. If you ever have any questions or doubts, come to me. I've had doubts before too. But I remember when my daughter Joy got this special scholarship when she was 16 years old to go to college. And so we said, well, this is the time. You need to go ahead and accept this and go. And so we had 7 different people who confronted her. And then I had 6 people who confronted me and said, I can't believe that you're going to allow your daughter to go out of state to school when she's 17. There's no way she's going to be okay. There's no way she's going to keep her faith. There's no way she's going to. And I remember being so shocked when someone told me that, because I thought, we've been preparing our children since they were little to own their own spiritual muscle, to make decisions that would create a story that they wanted to tell. And so we were so surprised at the reaction of so many people in our lives who said we were being immature by trusting our children forward. But I think that they heard for so many years how much we were believing in them, and we talked about their testimony, we talked about temptation, we talked about being strong, but we can't make you strong. You have to decide to be strong on your own, and what are the things you want to follow. And I do think that controlling anyone sends them away from us, but believing in, supporting, encouraging, coaching, coming along beside is kind of something all of us desire.
That's really great, Sally. And I think that actually gets us to, because you had friends that were saying that to you. You had friends that were questioning you.
Oh yeah, these are all Christian friends.
Right. And
because
so
they wouldn't have done that with their girl. And I thought, well, really? Because I really believe Joy's going to be just fine. And I'm going to be in contact with her all the time. And we trust one another. And she's going to tell me the moment something happens, So, yeah, it was a shock to me to realize, as I look back now even, there are so many women in my life who come to me and say, my mom, I don't have a good relationship with my mom. I never have. I don't even know what that looks like. She's always made me feel guilty. I don't ever do enough for her. I'm not perfect enough for her. And I just want women to know that we've got to treat our children with the kind of respect that we hope someone will treat us. And that means respecting us with our flaws, with our different personalities, with our different dreams, and also believing in the kind of potential of our friends and of our children. We need to be those people who respect the potential muscle that they have to be strong.
That's so good. So great, Sally. So let's move into, I really, really, really like the way your book is set up and how you walk people through kind of what friends do and who they are, what true friends are. And so can you just camp on some of that? So maybe we can begin with um, a friend helps you discover your core values, because that really is one of the places you start in the book. So what does that mean?
Well, I think you have to try to go someplace where people have your core values. In other words, again, I'm going to just use some of the stories from the book and my girls, but my daughter, Joy, and Sarah has said this too. One of them is getting her PhD in St. Andrews and in Scotland, and the other one is finishing her Master's of Theology in Oxford. And both of them said, when I chose to go to a place where people were doing what I was doing, which is studying theology in these two schools, I found that I had a groundwork for building a relationship with somebody who already had some of my values, who already had some of my dreams. And so I think if there's any possibility of us joining groups or being in places, for instance, young moms, I think a good place to go is to find a mother's group and to sort out amongst the women who have your values. Or we have in our ministry, we have about 2,000 or 3,000 mom heart groups all over the world. And people read our books together. And when you're shaping your values over the same kind of books, and you're having fun, and you're meeting on a regular basis and eating and doing the same things, when you have a group where you can develop the same values over the same ideas, that is a place to go. But another concept we talk about in the book is that in the same way that in dating, if you were going to date someone, you wouldn't say on the first date, let's get married. You would go out, you would get to know each other, you would watch how they are with their friends, you would watch how they are in life, you would watch how they are. In other words, it would be a progressive commitment. And I think that dating your friends is what we call it, is kind of a concept that has helped me over the years. I would go to church because we moved a lot. We moved 19 times, 7 times internationally. And so when I would go to church, I would kind of be on the lookout for somebody that over a period of time seemed like somebody I might respect, somebody that I wanted to emulate, or somebody who was walking with the Lord, or who was friendly, or who was, whatever. And then I would initiate to them and say, would you go out for coffee with me? I really need a like-minded friend. Or I would join their group or whatever. But we have to be kind of resourceful, but also very focused in how we give our heart away. We need to find women that call us to our best selves. So we need to look for women who are excellent and walking in the direction of excellence.
I've always talked to my friends about, a true friend when they are there for you in hard times, but they also cheer for you when something good happens to you. I think that's one of the tests of a friendship, is can they celebrate with you? Because that means they're really
Right.
for you rather than be jealous of you. And one
Mm-hmm.
of the ways that you put that in your book and you word it, and I thought this was great because it puts some handholds to that concept, but you talk about a friend is someone who cheers on your passions and who also helps you cultivate your gifts. So can you speak to that idea of just a friend celebrating you instead of having that jealous dynamic?
I think that I don't know how I have deserved some of my friends. I do have friends that I've tried for years to penetrate, and I think, hello, are you there? Who are you? And why are we not clicking? And I've learned just to, in the spirit of charity, to move on, to say whatever. But I think that I've had these things called leadership intensives at my home over the years where I will invite women. Sometimes they're leaders, sometimes they're just women who come to our conferences, and I'll say, we're going to spend Thursday through Sunday. We're going to be teaching principles of leadership, and we're going to have great meals, and the first 40 that come are welcome. And it's through kind of challenging women to great ideals where my best friends have come. They all came to my house when I invited them over for these leadership things, and now we work together in ministry and membership and in conferences. And I think sometimes when you're walking together toward some great ideals, or towards Christ, or towards influencing the world, or being light and beauty, or whatever it is, the kind of hearty, strong friendships that you're talking about are made. And I do think that along the way in my ministry, there have been people who just wanted to be near me so they could have an arena too, and they weren't healthy relationships, and they were manipulative. So I learned over the years to kind of keep a flag out for that, or look for that. But I do think that the women who actually care about the things I care about, we cheer each other on, and there isn't a sense of jealousy because we're serving Christ together. It's not about me. It's not about my ministry. It's not about them. We feel like together we're having so much fun reaching women all over the world with messages that will transform their lives. And I feel very privileged, but I feel like I found most of my dearest best friends when I was stepping out in ministry.
And I found that people are surprised when we cheer them on because it's not common. Krista's a great cheerleader, but we at the Sisterhood try to cheer women on. And when we have someone on as a guest on the podcast, we always tell them after, if there's anything we can do in the future, we don't want you to just be on the podcast and then we're done with you. And we hold these retreats, much like you, where the whole idea is to cheer each other on as we move towards the common goal. And I think that's really important. So for a woman who's in a local church, I think that is one area, like a practical way to start finding people, is to join an effort, something in your church where you're serving together, because then you will find people that are like-minded. And especially if you go to a big church where it's hard to meet people, getting, you may not feel like you have time, or you want to make a commitment to a small group where the intentionality there is relationship, but you want to serve. It's those people you're serving with where you can see their character often. You can observe how they interact with other people, and then you can cheer them on, and you can see how they cheer other people on or don't. And it is hard. I think we have to be discerning, like you said, about not giving our hearts away. And at the same time, you don't want to walk around always having this litmus test of people. You want it to feel kind of natural in some way. So
I kind of think,
go
don't
ahead.
you think that when you're involved in idealistic ministry, which you are and we are, we want to help women. We want to love them. And I want to say something really quickly. I love your cheering on, that you both said that. So it must be a value for your ministry. But I think that women need to know, don't be passive. Give people words of affirmation, spend time with them, be thoughtful, pray for them, call them. So there are things that we can do in order to reach out to people that need to be done in order for us to feel like somebody's a friend. But I do feel like for instance, we've had probably 260 women here for our leadership things, because we make them really small. We make them between 25 and 40. And I feel like as I reach out and give generously of who we are, I have a little leadership team that helps me. There are women who kind of rise to the top. There are women who are in the kitchen cleaning up the dishes. There are women who I watch, and they're talking with one another and praying, can I pray for you? Or how are you doing? Or maybe they'll leave me a thank you note, or they will say, what can I do to help you? And so I think that it's as you're going in ministry, that other women who have godly character are probably going to rise to the top, and those will become the women that you become the closest to. And we can't be friends with everyone. We can't possibly. No one has that much time. But also, I do think it's okay to kind of realize that there are going to be personalities that we're going to attract, and they're going to be attracted to us. I can't really be close to the 240 women who've been in my home, and I hope that I've encouraged them positively. But it's those people who kept coming back and initiating to me and encouraging me that now are my biggest leaders, or leaders that work the most with me. So I think that if you want to become really helpful to ministry, maybe you need to perceive what it looks like to be faithful, to add, to give, to fold chairs, to clean dishes, to whatever, because you're attracted to other women who are also givers. Does that make sense?
Yes. And so I had a friend who was really struggling through friendships for a season. And I said to her at one point, you're only going to be able to be friends with really secure women, because these other friendships that I see that are falling apart are really, they're kind of pointing to some insecurities in women,
Right.
and
That's
so
a good point.
breaking down. And so what I hear you saying, Sally, when you describe that, I think that's a secure woman. That's a woman rooted in who she is and in Christ, who can then see others. So how do we get to that place where we are more of that person? And then how do we find those people?
Well, I think that women really need to decide if they want to be a victim of their story, or if they want to use their story as a platform for reaching out to others. In other words, I have a friend who has had an abortion, and it was terrible. It was heartbreaking. It was awful. But she went to counseling afterwards and worked through all of the issues that she struggled with. And then she started volunteering at a crisis pregnancy center. And she gave friendship and love to women in a way that she wished somebody had come along beside her. And so as I look at her life, she has gone through a process of doing what she needed to do, whether it was going to counseling, whether it was, really healing and looking for ways to grow forward. And I've written a lot of books, and I have a chapter in this book called Own Your Life, that we as women have agency. We can decide who we'll become, in the sense of forgetting what lies behind and reaching forward to what lies ahead. But I think that we need to put ourselves in the pathway of healthy women. We need to read books that will help us to become more mature. We need to seek Bible studies that might help us. I think that the women in my life who work with me now, several of them have terrible backgrounds. One of them was abandoned by her mom when she was 1, and so on and so forth. And yet the women that are resilient are, like you said, those women who have said, I will not be defined by the difficulties in my life. I will allow the difficulties to teach me compassion. But I think there's a point at which we have got to decide to like who we are, to decide to like our story and say, in this story, I can bring joy and goodness and beauty. And I want to become a blessing in my life. So there are so many decisions that Scripture teaches us to have, to live by faith, to forget what lies behind, to remember that God's love will always be there. And when we can grow in Christ, and when we're determined not to be a victim, it actually is a part of helping us to grow.
That'll preach, Sally, right there. That was just that little part. Wow. That is so good. And I'm just getting in the minds of women who are listening, and I'm thinking a lot of them are saying to themselves, okay, I've got some work to do, and maybe I've got some unhealthy friendships in my life. So what do people do if they are in these friendships that really aren't healthy? How do they navigate that? How do they navigate that pruning if that needs to happen?
There's a great book that I absolutely love, and I give to about everybody I know, called Boundaries. And it really speaks of what are healthy boundaries with other people. And there's another book called Safe People. And in Safe People, both of them are by McLeod and someone else. I'm so sorry, I can't remember the second
Townsend.
person. Townsend McLeod. But these books really helped me in ministry and with our family because, number one, we realized, oh my goodness, we can say no to unhealthy people. I can't control how other people respond, but I can control how I respond. And boundaries helped me to understand that it wasn't my responsibility to fix everyone. It was my responsibility to fix myself. And then safe people really helped me because, excuse me, it kind of identifies 7 attributes of people that are unsafe, like manipulation or self-centeredness or whatever, negativity or criticism. And when I was reading the book, I thought, oh, wow, I'm guilty of 2 of these. I guess I'm an unsafe person in this way and this way. And I think that the more we are healed, the more we love who we are, accept God's love, accept his forgiveness, the happier we are. And the happier we are, the more we're going to have to give to a healthy relationship with someone else. But we kind of need to self-actualize and heal ourselves so that we can become healthy in relationships and not say, I have to have a perfect husband, or I have to have perfect children, or I have to have a perfect friend so that I can feel okay about myself. Because no imperfect human is ever going to satisfy our basic needs for acceptance.
Sally, there's something I also wanted to mention, and that is that I've heard counselors say before that when you've been really hurt in an arena, sometimes actually entering back into that arena differently in a healthier space, that you heal.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking of women who have been hurt by friendships and so are kind of holding friendships at bay. But I want to encourage people that actually entering back into female friendships that are healthy could be a part of your healing in that. Would you agree
Mm-hmm.
with that?
Yeah, I don't know that they have to go back to the exact same place, because sometimes one of my friends who actually leads our ministry in England was saying that she was involved in drugs and she was involved with all these women that went to bars and did this, that, and the other. And she said, once I became a Christian, I thought, I don't know what or how, but I'm going to go and see if there are healthy women out there in the world. And again, I have so many self-made people around me. I mean, self-made, God's grace, obviously, but I do think that women who, wise women follow wise women. You kind of collect wise ideas, you collect wise books. Some of my best mentors have been authors. But I do think that living by fear or insecurity will only cause you to feel more isolated. And it takes courage, and it takes a commitment of faith, saying, God, would you help me find a community of people? And I have to say here, because we've moved so much, I've had to start every group I've ever been involved in. I've had to invite women over. Yeah, I've had to say, I'm going to read this book. Would you all like to read it together? Or maybe we can just have coffee once a month or whatever. And again, sometimes just 1 or 2 people have come. And then one time I had a Bible study of 150 women in my home. And so you don't know who's going to respond, but I do think that a lot of women are wishing that someone would reach out to them and see the needs that are underneath. And just thoughtfulness and eating really helps build friendships.
Yeah. But risk-taking is what you're saying.
Yeah.
There's an element of risk of putting yourself out there and kind of being the change you want to see, if you will, in the world. Mm-hmm. And
I want to say, I think it's a battleground. I want women to know that you are not the only person who has a hard time finding friends. I get letters like this all the time. People are so busy that maybe they're not even available to be a friend. But if you're struggling with that, it doesn't mean that you aren't a good friend. It just means keep struggling, because I really think cultivating real in-time personal relationships is a battleground. But if we do it, we are going to find ourselves strengthened, encouraged, and able to live a more sustainable life. Mm-hmm. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, I think that's a great word and a good way to close us out. Thank you, Sally. We are excited to share your book with our listeners, Girls Club, that you wrote with your daughters. And we encourage women to take that risk in friendship. And we hope that you find friends by listening to the podcast, but we really want you to have real life friends that can wipe your tears and hug you as you go through your days.
So true. Well, thank you so much. I feel like we all would have so much fun if we could just spend a whole day together talking.
Yeah, the next time you do one of your leadership conferences, I'm going to show up at your door. Just when you hear a knock, it's going to be me standing there.
Well, they are a lot of fun. You know, I've never seen women talk so much in my life. So it's really fun weekends. If I do it, I'll let you know.
Great. That sounds awesome. I'll be there. All right, Sally, have a great day and give your daughters a hug for us.
I sure will. Thanks for having me. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.